In this video, we're going to talk about how do we simplify a radical number when we have a radical in the denominator of a fraction. So this is actually going to kind of set up what we're talking about with dividing radicals. So there's actually a problem with how we want to write this expression. Just like we don't like a negative in the denominator, we want it up top or out in front. We can't have negative exponents as part of our simplified expression. We also can't have a radical in the denominator. So this would not be a completely simplified expression. So when we're dealing with fractions, a lot of times when we need to change how it looks without actually changing the value of the fraction, we have to multiply by 1. So there are a lot of different ways that we can multiply this by 1 without actually multiplying by the specific integer 1, because that doesn't change how it looks, right? So what we want to do is we want to multiply the denominator here by square root of 10. We want to multiply it by itself. We can't just take this and square it, right? Because the square root of 10 being squared, those would cancel each other out and we'd be left with just the 10. That would be a completely different value of what we have here. And we can't just square the top and the bottom. It doesn't quite work the same. So we have to think about this multiplying by 1 concept. So if we multiply the bottom or denominator by the square root of 10, then we have to multiply the numerator by square root of 10, because square root of 10 over square root of 10 is the same as 1. So that's how we end up changing what this expression looks like without actually changing the value of the expression. Right? So when we multiply fractions, we got to remember to multiply across the top and multiply across the bottom. So our numerator becomes 2 root 10. Our denominator becomes root 100, and that works out perfect because that's a perfect square. And that's the reason why we want to multiply this by itself, because we will always end up with a perfect square. So the numerator, we could try to factor the 10. Remember, we always want to simplify as much as possible. But the only thing we can factor is 1 and 10, which doesn't help, and 2 and 5, and none of those are perfect squares. So the numerator remains 2 root 10, and square root of 100 is 10. And then that last step is think about just the numbers or coefficients aside from our radical here. This is like the fraction 2 over 10, and that can be simplified to 1 over 5 or just root 10 over 5.